Have any of you ever been in a house where the roof fell down?
With me
No.
in it?
Yeah.
Thank God, no.
How about a floor that collapsed?
No.
Yeah, my husband
No.
was literally walking over his like attic floor and it fell and he fell through the floor and broke two of his ribs.
Oh my gosh.
That's terrifying.
And that is why structure matters. Welcome to Semi Sages of the Pages, where we're going to help you take your dream idea of a book and create a reality. If you're taking this series with us, you know that we've progressed through phases. And each one of these phases, we ask critical questions about what your novel needs to become the best it can be. And in this phase, we're going to talk about structure and why you don't want to fall through the floor. So, what are some common misconceptions, do you think, Teresa and Molly, about structure? About what structure is?
I got the biggest one.
Okay.
That structure and plotting are the same thing.
Oh, that structure and plotting. And what would we think would be the difference between structure and plotting?
So plotting, you might have a plan and you might plan out everything. But just because you have a plan doesn't mean that that plan is structurally sound.
There was a floor there. He fell through it. That kind of like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like you can make a whole list of series of events that are going to happen. You can plan it all out, but that doesn't necessarily make the best structure. You might not have pinch points or a climax or stuff set up right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is the flip side of it. There are plenty of people who might not meticulously plot, but do understand structure very well. And so they might not have long plot documents and bullet points and post-it notes everywhere, but they understand key elements and they know how to get there in between them that make a very strong, sturdy structure. So they're actually very different things. We're not talking about whether you plot or pants. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're
Exactly.
talking about that every story needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. We're talking about that every story needs to have a mirror from the opening pages and the emotions that the reader feels in the opening pages to the end, and how to create that arc without it being the same over and over and over again. So that we're talking about how each scene can pull tension and then release in a way that propels you through the novel, excitingly moving from beginning to middle to end, ready to devour the next aspect of the novel, right?
Eat any good books lately?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different books and methods out there that can help you have structure if you want to use them. You don't have to, but common popular ones are, help me out, you guys. You got Snowflake Method, you got Story Genius, you got Joseph Campbell,
How to Save the Cat.
Save the Cat.
Hero's Journey.
Hero's Journey. You've got Take Off Your Pants.
You've got just a standard 3-act, 5-act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Hero's Journey. Yeah. Dan Harmon's Story Circle is a great one if you're a beginner and you want something really simple. Yeah, Dan Harmon's Story Circle might be a great place to start.
So let me ask, why would somebody maybe want to use these methods? And I will actually preface this by saying I use a combination of two methods.
I think the answer is that it's very easy to start a story strong with a great idea, and then it fizzles out or a character takes over and it either drags. We hear really common about the middle, soggy middle kind of taking over, or it's so fast that the characters don't develop, or the climax just doesn't have enough stakes. So people don't.
The story balloons. That's a big problem. It
Yeah.
just becomes this convoluted mess.
Or never ends. You're like, I don't know how I'm supposed to end this story. I had that problem hugely with Warehouse Dreams. I was like, I don't know where to end this thing.
Yeah. How to get the stakes high enough that you care about the reader or not the reader, the protagonist, the characters, and then how to make sure the characters arc. So when you go to close the story, like Teresa's talking about, it feels like we're ready for the resolution. It feels like the denouement is gives the reader a satisfaction, a completion, so that they have the enjoyment they sought when they first opened your story.
Yeah, I think setting up stories, the beginning of stories, is exciting. A lot of people have ideas, and when you have an idea, a lot of times you might have an idea of the beginning of a story or the conflict or the world or how something gets set up. And sometimes I've met people who also have an idea of what the end is. But story structure, like Morgan said, really can help people figure out how to get from that beginning to that end in a logical manner that will feel fulfilling to the reader, that will make the reader feel like, oh, this makes sense and I appreciate it. And I felt like the whole book worked together, right? The whole story was a cohesive unit that built upon each other, built upon itself.
Just like a house, you don't want to have an entire back wall missing, you know, you need to have a complete package so that you have the experience, the safety, the new way to feel or experience the world. And then when you exit it, it stays there, it stays intact. And that helps the reader suspend belief. When they visit your world, your structure helps them suspend belief and escape their world and accept your world as their own. And if we don't have a structure that's tight, then the reader starts to not trust you and they stop suspending belief, and then they no longer have buy-in. And they'll a lot of times put it down or get angry or frustrated. And that's because the structure is not giving them the emotional payoff for the time that they've invested in your characters.
Invest!
Exactly. And if you followed us this far, you know that one of our big goals of this How to Write Your Dream Book is for you to finish your book. And having a structure can help you finish your book because you know where it's going.
And one example I'll use, if you're not someone who likes to plot, again, that's fine. That's not where we're talking about. Maybe I have found it very useful, especially while I'm writing. Sometimes you get in that middle and sometimes you're like, crap, what do I need to be doing? How do I get myself to the next place? What should I be doing here? And structure for me can be very useful for solving problems, can be very useful to be like, okay, according to this structure, I need to have XYZ here. According to this structure, I need to have a pinch point here. I need to have a realization. I need to have whatever it might be. And there's a lot of different structures. There's a lot of different options, but it can get you out of a funk. It can make you be like, oh yeah, that's right. I should be doing XYZ. Oh, I do need to tie this thing up. And then it can propel you forward if you get stuck in your story and you're not sure what to do next or where to go. It's very helpful.
So there's no question you're going to need structure and you're going to have structure. The question is if the structure will carry your audience through or if it'll forget parts or miss parts. And so the idea is that we want a clear beginning, middle, and end. In all of our books, all stories, all human communication, we need a beginning, middle, and end. And in that middle, we need something that kind of pulls the story together and gives us either the character finally gets what they want, and then maybe there's something bad that happens because of it, or they have an epic fail. But that pinch point in the middle is critical to all story structures. So as you're kind of outlining your novel, you want to think about your climax. Of course, your climax is important, but you really need to think about how the middle works with the climax. And it doesn't matter which of the hundreds of story structures out there we talk about, we're going to be looking at how the middle sets up the climax, either as the opposite of it or as a red herring or some way to throw your reader off. But there needs to be some kind of deliberate focus on those two components and how they hold the theme and the moral and the character's journey together.
I'm going to reword what Morgan said, but in a not meaner, but
more direct.
more direct way and be like, your middle has to like do something.
Do something.
It has to matter.
Something significant.
Something has to matter in the middle.
Yeah. They can't
Right.
just go and get breakfast together. Well, I mean, they could. Actually, they could. But that's a romance.
I've read
something
real
better
books.
happens.
I've read real books where like they did things in the middle, but what they did didn't matter. And sometimes it's okay, like Morgan was saying, try fail cycles, right? You can try something and have it fail, but that still matters. It still runs down your clock. It still increases stakes or tension, or your characters grow, or something, that can matter. But I've also read books where people just journey around in a forest for the entire time, and it didn't actually do anything. It didn't increase stakes or tension or character. It was just a series of events. So that's when Morgan's talking about pinch points or character arcs or stuff like that, you want your middle to mean something.
And that means if the reader is reading it and telling you that nothing happens, it means that you didn't make it clear enough how what was happening affected your characters. Either you as an author didn't do enough work on the internal dialogue or explaining the stakes of why that breakfast mattered. Because if it was poisoned, that's a big deal. If she saw her boyfriend with another woman, that's a big deal. And then how she reacts to that. I mean, if she goes and she sees her boyfriend with another woman and she's just like, whatever, and chowing down on her hash browns, then the reader doesn't care.
Hash browns.
But if she's like, can't ever look at hash browns again because it makes her think about that woman, now we have a different effect. Now we've linked what's happening in the novel to how it affects the character, affects the scene, and we've given stakes and meaning. And that can be on that very personal level, just the way maybe she goes to breakfast and she sees a bald, short man who reminds her of somebody who does something traumatic to her as a child. Well, that has tons of stakes for her, but not the reader unless you make that connection, unless you help the reader feel what that character is feeling and that insecurity and that threat and her heart rate rising and her palms getting sweaty and not being able to look him in the eye, but not wanting to have power over her. What does that look and feel and smell like in that scene? And as you build that and show that, your structure is sound and the tension is powerful, and you're pushing and pulling in scenes, and that creates the story. And hash browns.
Please send us hash browns. No.
Morgan was just so poetic and said everything I wanted to say.
It was gorgeous.
And then my brain was like, beautiful, wonderful, hash browns, hash browns, hash browns.
All right. Now that the episode has turned into hash browns.
Turned into just hash.
Comment below about how much you love hash browns.
But circling it around, I think Morgan, that was beautiful.
It really was.
Thank you. And if you like to learn more about StRucTure, if you want advice from us about which types of structures we recommend for which type of books, because we have a lot of different recommendations depending on what you're writing and what feeling you want, I would recommend different structures.
And who you are and how you work.
Yeah, what your style is like. Check us out on Discord. Come join our family. Tell us about what you're writing. Ask us specific details, and more to come because we're writing a book, obviously. And you can learn about how we interpret StRucTure and how we use that in our process so that you can decide how much freedom or how much structure, how much guidance you need as you lay out the events and tensions of your novel.
We'll lay it out.
Now, what are you doing here? Go write.
Yeah, go write.
I need hash browns.